It is now 5 o'clock, August 15, 2017, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville, and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistic Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City as Housing as its successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gomez is absent, but I understand that she is just running a little bit late, so will be here. Councilmember Kennedy is absent from this meeting. Councilmember Negrete?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. This is the time and place for the public to address the council. I don't see anyone present. Therefore, I will ask our declaration of closed session items by City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have several items, many of which are related. On behalf of the City Council, item A is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. The circumstances and facts related to that are set forth on the agenda. Item B and C on behalf of the City Council are related to items F, G, H, and I on behalf of the Airport Authority. That is pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and the litigation title and case numbers are all set forth on the agenda. Item D is related on behalf of the City Council, is related to item J on behalf of the Airport Authority. Again, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and again, the case name and case number is set forth on the agenda. Item E is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957B. The position is City Manager. And lastly, item K is real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8. The property location and negotiators are set forth on the agenda. To the extent there is reportable action, we will report it at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock regular session.
Thank you. At this time, we will recess to our closed session, and regular session convenes at 6 p.m. It is now 6 o'clock, August 15th, 2017, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville, and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City as Housing as its successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gomez?
Good evening, everyone.
Councilmember Kennedy is absent. Councilmember Negrete?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. May we have closed session announcements by our City Attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had several closed session items this evening, all of which are on the agenda. Item A on behalf of the City Council was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2, and the facts and circumstances related to that are set forth on the agenda. Item B and C on behalf of the City Council are related to items F, G, H, and I on behalf of the Airport Authority. That is all pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. The case names and case numbers are all set forth on the agenda. Item D is on behalf of the City Council is related to item J on the Airport Authority. Also existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. And again, the case names and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. Item E, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957B, position City Manager. Item J, we already covered. And then item K, lastly, is real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8. The property location and the negotiating parties are set forth on the agenda. There is no reportable action with respect to any of those items at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Father Patrick Travers from Holy Innocents Church, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Police Chief John Schuler. Please stand.
Let's bow our heads and pray. Lord, we are here this evening for this City Council to conduct matters of business and to thank you for all of your blessings. Because of our God-given right of freedom of speech, we know that this council is of diverse opinions, and so we ask you to guide our hearts and minds in the spirit of fairness so that they may reach a successful conclusion of business, for the good of all who have placed their trust and confidence in their leadership. Father, we also ask you to mend their differences and impart your supreme wisdom upon each of them, keeping them aware of the example they must set by keeping them from short-sightedness and pettiness, and granting them the humility they need to seek your will in all that they do for their constituents, but most especially for the youth in our communities, some who may have dreams of giving back to their city, state, or nation by serving as this council does in government. We thank you for your heavenly blessings upon all of us. Amen.
This evening, we do not have any proclamations. So City Clerk, please present the agenda to Council and revisions to the agenda.
Yes, Mayor Garcia. Persons who would wish to address the council on a specific item or any item that does not appear on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards located in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments made during the written communications or public comment sections of the agenda are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less as deemed necessary by the mayor. Communications are to be addressed directly to the City Council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Any person or group who interferes with the conduct of a City Council meeting by willfully interrupting and/or disrupting the meeting is subject to removal. A peace officer may be requested to assist with removal should any person or group fail to comply with an order of removal by the Council. Any person or group who resists removal by a peace officer is subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9, Penal Code Section 403. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the council, and there are 2 revisions to tonight's agenda, which are on the dais for the City Council and have been made available to the public. The first one is on item number D1. There is a request from the staff to remove this item from tonight's agenda. And there is a revision to item number D4. There is a new staff report. It's revised to include page 2 that was inadvertently omitted originally. And those are the only revisions I have, Mayor Garcia.
Thank you. We do not have any appeal hearings. Therefore, we move on to public hearings. And item B1, a public hearing to hear arguments for and against confirmation of annual assessments for the maintenance of street lighting in the citywide street lighting assessment district for fiscal year 2017-18. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Recommendation is that the City Council adopt Resolution Number 17-048 for fiscal year 2017-2018, confirming the annual assessments and approval of the engineer's report for the citywide street lighting assessment district.
Thank you. At this time, I open the public hearing. I do not have any cards from the public. Therefore, I close the public hearing. And at this time, are there any council members that would like to comment or have any questions?
Yes, I do. So for clarity and for understanding of what's happening, it was $13.98 for the year, right? It wasn't going to be a monthly fee, and this was something that was ongoing. Any clarification on that?
The $13.98, I believe, is an annual fee. It's a fee that is not changing. Hasn't changed since it was created back in 2013, and is intended to be funded at the rate of $13.98 on an equivalent dwelling unit basis to fund signal streetlights throughout the city.
And then one other pressing question: where does this funding come from?
This is from it's an assessment-based or property assessment-based tax, so it actually gets paid through the property taxes. And one of the fundamental reasons why this item is on, in addition to certifying through the engineering report, we actually have to go through a process that once the engineering report is complete and the cost of service is proven necessary, then we actually have to submit all of the data, including assessor parcel number, along with the rate, to the county assessor's office. From there, they actually then incorporate this into the bill and gets paid through the property taxes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
What else? Can I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, second by Ms. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Kennedy absent.
Now we move on to item B2, a public hearing to hear arguments for and against repealing Chapter 13.80 of the Title 13 of the Victorville Municipal Code relating to residency restrictions for registered sex offenders. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the City Council open and conduct the public hearing, close the public hearing, and introduce ordinance number 2372 for adoption and first reading by title only.
Thank you. At this time, I open the public hearing. And I do have one card. Clayton Moore, you can come down and speak.
All right, well, good evening. Focusing on this topic here, I read the backup material that was in the agenda package online, and it looks like you're doing a first reading by title only here. So I noticed that online you had that the Victorville Municipal Code chapters 13.8 and 13.9 are affected here. The residency distance restrictions and the fact that they're off limits to schools, parks, and homeless shelters, related areas like that. And I noticed that the study showed there were the unintended consequences of that law. And reading through the information, it was pretty clear to me that if you don't know where they are, it's hard to monitor them the way law enforcement would like to. And this law seems to drive them in that direction. And so repealing it follows the other examples that were cited in your information there, the other cities that repealed there. And it's still covered by the state. I went online and did some further research, and I noticed that the United Nations has a Convention on the Rights of the Child, an international treaty that more than 1,000 nations have signed, when Articles 34 and 35 require states to protect children from all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. But two nations have not signed that treaty, South Sudan and ours. So locally, we tend to deal with that. The Centers for Disease Control has some statistics. about this matter. And maybe I'll share them beyond your first reading here, but they are available online at centersfordiseasecontrol.gov. And they mention protective factors to prevent this problem, because as a teacher, I've had some training in this. And I know that most of the people who commit these violations are, well, let me see. Relatives are 30%, blood relatives. Other acquaintances make up 60%. And of that 60%, 10% are strangers. And this is not a sudden thing that happens. It's something that happens over time. And it can be prevented. And one way to prevent it, according to the Centers for Disease Control, is parental use of reasoning to resolve family conflict, emotional health and connectedness. We work hard on building positive relationships in the school districts. Academic achievement is a preventive factor for this. Academic achievement. And empathy with concern for how one's actions affect others. Those are preventive measures put forth by the Centers for Disease Control. It looks like the law has given you a path to follow, like it does many of us, and what we have to do. And I think the larger picture supports what we have to do in getting rid of that law. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the only card that I had. So I will close the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments by council members?
Yes. So for the benefit of Mr. Board of Trustee Clayton Moore, are we just doing the first reading for Chapter 13.80, 13.90, Mr. Bernatsky?
Yes, we're just doing introduction and first reading of these ordinances.
And then after the first reading, we'll have a second reading, and that's procedural?
Correct. It'll require a second reading, at which time it's adopted, and then it becomes effective 30 days thereafter.
And it won't be on written calendar, but in a consent calendar with a one-motion pass?
Typically, when we have a second reading on an ordinance, unless a council member wants it pulled, it is typically done on a consent calendar basis.
Okay, and my own questions that I had one question in regards to this matter. I was reading the whether it's a broad or a narrow interpretation of what ordinances the city council signed when they put this in play, and I noticed that it did begin to probably marginalize what one member would be to go to a school or being able to go to all these types of matters. And in the reading, I felt that perhaps if we keep going along the same line of thinking, we can do that to many ordinances. But what is it that council members do in order to avoid something like this, a repeal? Or do we always wait for state law to come in before local jurisdiction pops in their own opinions?
Right. I think what's happened here is the prior councils had a desire to try and regulate this to the greatest extent possible under the law, which they did do at that time. Subsequent to that time, there have been a couple of lawsuits that have been filed challenging cities that have very similar ordinances based on the fact that the state has regulated this area, and therefore the state preempts local regulation. Accordingly, based on the outcome of those lawsuits and the two cases that have come down, most cities that are getting challenged now are repealing their ordinances based on the fact that you can't win this if you're challenged legally. And we have a letter from an individual seeking to challenge us, so this is a preventative matter to save the taxpayers' money, not go through the litigation, which we would ultimately probably lose based on existing case law.
So then it's recommended that council unanimously approve this.
That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. No further questions.
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
I like the idea that the city council was trying to look at for the schools and the parks and the playgrounds and attempted to regulate it, but at this point, I don't agree with it. I have to vote for it because I don't think we have any choice.
That's how I feel.
Madam Mayor, I would like to agree with the Mayor Pro Tem's comments as well.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville, California, repealing Chapter 13.80 of Title 13 of the Victorville Municipal Code relating to residency restrictions for registered sex offenders.
Thank you.
Move that we introduce ordinance number 2372, first reading by title only.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Ms. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Kennedy absent.
Now we move on to consent calendar. Consent calendar, items C1 through C10 can be approved with one motion unless there is an item that needs to be pulled for discussion.
Before we make a motion, I'd like to make a comment on C3, if that's possible.
Go ahead.
So for C3, I was left pending. George, there was a question that you were going to respond to in regards to Selectron Technologies. I was wanting to know when was the last time an RP, a request for quote was done. Were you able to?
I did check with staff on that, and this is a company that we've had in place since the early 2000s. There is a particular interaction with our current system in this particular service, so it would be difficult to try to bid it out because we may not have that same compatibility. But we can look into now, since it has been some time, potentially if there's even a market for this particular type of product.
So if I understand you accurately, then for the last so many years, it wasn't possible, but in the future, we'll look into something of a request for quote. All right, thank you. No further questions.
I have a motion.
There are no further questions or comments from the staff. Move the consent items 2 through 10. Is it 10? 13?
C1.
10.
Oh,
Yes. See what? Yes.
Second.
Just for clarification, that is items 1 through
1.
10.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Ms. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Kennedy absent.
Now we move on to written communications. And item D1 has been removed from the agenda per staff request. So I move on to item D2, development activity update. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Any action or direction for staff is at the discretion of the City Council on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Chris Borchert, Development Director. This item was put on at the request of Councilmember Negretti to give a planning update. To do that, we provided 3 attachments. We have, first attachment is single-family subdivision activity report. This gives you all of the tentative track maps that are currently existing in the city right now. At our peak, in the late 2008-2009 period, we had 130 tentative track maps alive that totaled about 14,000 lots. What you're looking at in this activity list today is 51 still alive tentative maps that have about 6,500 lots on them. The second attachment is the planning entitlement reports. The first one you see is the PLNs, and we did those from 2015 through 2017. PLNs refer to activities that are approved by the Planning Commission. So those typically are new construction. Also at the back of that, you have the ADM entitlements, which are approved by staff at the staff level. They're a little less controversial in nature, no controversy actual. And these go also from 2015 through 2017 and highlight some of the projects and businesses that are coming into the city that way. And then lastly, there is a construction activity report that details the number of projects, the valuation that is given on those projects, and also the square footage. So with that, we didn't, if you had any more further detail, Councilmember Negretti, and that you'd like to see in the future, let us know.
And just to confirm, Councilmember Negretti brought it up at the last meeting, but it was a consensus of the council to bring it forward at that meeting. So that's why it's here. I think Councilmember Negretti had some thoughts on trying to spur development. So in order to foster that discussion of the council, we wanted to bring you as much information as we have readily at our fingertips to foster that discussion, and staff is available for any direction.
I can go, I can go last if somebody else has something to say.
Yes, I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My question, so thank you for clarifying. I was going to ask, why was this on the agenda? You said it's to spur development, only residential. What's with commercial and industrial, is that inclusive, or are we just focusing on the residential area?
Neither at this point, actually. The comments from Councilmember Negretti had to do with spurring residential development, but the reason this item is on is just simply to give information to the council to foster that discussion. The staff at this point isn't taking any position on any actions to spur development. We're here to listen to the thoughts of the council, and if there's a consensus to do something to do that, we will bring that back at a later meeting.
Okay, so let's see if I understand this accurately. So it's the desire of council to look into the subdivisions of families to see if we can spur some kind of residential development? I mean, I'm not quite understanding what this is. I mean, I read through it. I see a lot of APNs, a lot of addresses, so I want to get a foothold of what it is that this item is.
Well, before you is just the reports of activity that has occurred from the early 2000s to today. Specifically to the subdivisions, those are where somebody has looked at a piece of vacant land that's zoned residentially and has designed a track map to go on that land. So these are just paper maps of where future subdivisions in the city or neighborhoods in the city would be.
So these are inclusive of empty lots, not just the vacant ones, but also that already have been divided and zoned as residential.
Correct.
Okay, and this would include CUPs or PUDs. I think they're PUDs.
Yes,
okay.
Could include PUDs or specific plans as well.
Okay, and then I'll just probably wait for council, since this was council's
Sure.
item.
Sure.
I'll garner some more understanding as they begin to speak.
I'm going to be sending questions to you because we have a lot of subdivisions that have been approved that have houses, some houses, maybe 20%, 10%, 30%. The rest of the subdivision is sitting empty. But in the area where the houses are, there was an agreement to have landscape maintenance districts, and they're not in because they're waiting to develop. And in many instances, they're waiting for the 1-inch cap. The streets that exist are paved, but they're deteriorating at a rapid rate. And I'd like to address that, have the council address that. I'll be submitting that because I'm not sure what the plan is. Are bonds still in place? Is it cash in lieu of bonds? They're half empty. They're sitting there. There's no modifications. I know the council talked about changing subdivisions, but they're set. Don't know what we're supposed to do with.
Oh, absolutely. We'd be happy to take
lots out
those
of 100
questions.
With the streets unfinished and all the street lights are in, but they're not lit and the streets aren't paved. And I don't want to take up the time here because each one are different. But I've had a lot of calls in regard to what is the city doing, and of course the question is what are the subdividers and builders doing. But I've also been told that some of those bonds have probably dissolved or the original subdividers have gone bankrupt and the bonds are no longer in place. Therefore, whose responsibility is it to pave those streets once they start building? And so I'll give you a list of the ones that I'm aware of. I'll copy council when I do that. And then
Yeah, that would be good to have time. That does take some time to research all those different issues.
If I can make a quick request of the council to try to get consensus, perhaps it might be good to have a workshop scheduled later. Mayor Pro Tem, and any ideas of the council could be sent to the planning department first for their, so they can be prepared for a workshop. But this is more about policy as council members, and I'm sure not everyone is aware. But 10 years ago, if you look at page 34 of this report, we had literally thousands of homes being made, I guess as late as 2006. And then you see a drop-off of epic proportions. And what happens in a big project, whether you have 100 units or 20 or 30, people have gone out and got financing and hired people. But when the economy doesn't cooperate and the fundamentals were just all out of whack back then in the economic crisis, nobody planned to have a 10-year stop of construction activity, sales activity. Many banks foreclosed on those people, and banks are owning these properties, whether it be commercial, industrial, or residential. And all you have to do is go down 7th Street and look at many non-performing real estate assets. So if you look at a building that's burnt out, okay, that building would be better if it was demolished and you had just a plain piece of land, as opposed to a building that needs to be demolished, which is a cost. There's a cost to that. So if I'm a prospective buyer, and 7th Street is the wonderful location, it's a landmark location. The Holiday Inn, say whatever you will, but what they've done to the Ambassador Hotel is a fantastic example of what we can do. We don't have to have underperforming burned out buildings. Another thing people don't realize is that when you're trying to redevelop, and our hands are tied as a city, obviously we don't have redevelopment anymore. But when you look at an old Target building over there on, I'm blanking here,
Amargosa and
Elevado?
No, Amargosa and
Palmdale. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But anyway, see, the problem is that let's say Super Target wanted that same site. Well, they couldn't use that building because that building was built in, Chris, do you know?
Gemco?
Oh, no, but no, what year it was built?
Oh, year? Oh, geez, early 80s.
Okay, so you're asking a Super Target to come in and use an old building that has HVAC, heating, air conditioning challenges, wiring, all the kinds of stuff, and you want them to sign a 20-year lease in a non-performing, outdated building. And so I guess what I'm looking at here, we've had many problems in the city of Victorville, and they are difficult but not impossible. Now, from a leadership perspective, if Jim gets a call, Mayor Pro Tem Cox gets a call, Councilmember Gomez gets a call, or Mayor Garcia or Councilmember Kennedy gets a call, we support jobs, right? Everybody does. We support activity. Whenever you do have a housing development, you also get fees for schools. And Chris, per door, can you say how much the fees are off the top of your head?
$350 a square foot, 2,000 square feet.
All in fees, 24,000 a door, something like that.
Oh, that's a little high, but yeah.
I mean, so there's lots of revenues. The skate park that we're getting, that came from impact fees that are paid from development. So I don't want to take the council's time here. But what's happening, I think we need to be aligned a little bit more as an organization, because it doesn't help us at all to set policy, but then have a disaster is what happened. So what you have seen and what you are seeing is people that may be involved with these projects that they weren't in real estate before. I mean, that's what happens in real estate. Happened in the 80s. We had a crash, 75% of the people left that industry, and you had all brand new people come in. And then they're sitting there banging their fist on your planning desk, allegedly. I've heard that happens. Anyway, so I'm very familiar with this. But when you get into a problem like that, I think we as a city can be more proactive, and there's going to be exceptions. I believe. And it's not an adversarial thing with the city planning staff. We understand when you do a project, you're expected to comply with the environmental rules and all the other permits and fees and license. I'm not talking about making exceptions for the requirements that we have. But what I am saying is that just like when someone has a septic tank and they have a financial hardship when they try to sell their house, and then we have an ordinance, right, that says you need to connect to the sewer before you can sell that house. And if they were going to make anything on that house sale, I forget what it is, like $8,000 or something to connect to the sewers in most cases. So then they come here and they get a variance and we make an exception. And that's an example of, I want people to know that we have gone through a lot and things are getting better. But I think a workshop would be timely. And it's not, trust me, I think I've only been down that side of the building twice in 3 years. Okay, so I'm not trying to get into the weeds, but from a policy perspective, I would appreciate a workshop and appreciate the council support if we could schedule that.
I'm in favor of it.
I have a few questions too. So for that, the 25 of the 100 lots, I'm assuming they're not all empty lots or vacant. So I know that it requires, if there's new development, there's development impact fees that would help pay. Not 100% of all these lots, but then there's also taxpayer money, and then there's taxes. Because where do we get money to reappropriate and get these items or these lands to be developed or fixed or brought up to par or retrofitted or whatever? So also, I think we need to start thinking it's not just up to the city to do these kinds of moves, but we need the assistance with, we know what the 3 Ps are: public, private, partnering, or negotiating with other individuals as well, and being able to bring something like this. So I agree that a workshop would be beneficial for the general public as for ourselves to be able to kind of navigate and kind of think through out loud with the public, what is it that we can do as policymakers, because we are your voice and we need to be able to hear that voice and throw around these ideas. So I do support what Councilmember Negrete has brought to the table.
So, Madam Mayor, if I might, this item, as with any items that come up under item E3 at the end of the agenda, we put it on the next council meeting because the council can't really have a discussion on the first meeting when it's brought up because it's not on the agenda. So that's the purpose of this. We put together a little bit of data that we had readily available and wanted to seek your input on where we go from here. So we can certainly put a workshop together just to foster discussion. Can I make a recommendation that we also have our planning staff reach out to other cities and find out, any activities they've performed in order to help spur development and provide, to the extent that we can, some of the pros and cons. I mean, some of the things that cities do are 100% good. Some are not so good, and it leaves the city without funding that it needs. So I think that would be helpful for the council to have something a little bit meatier to chew on rather than just throwing out ideas. If the council's comfortable with that, we can set that up for as soon as we get the research done, but sometime in the near future.
Thank you.
A consensus on that, and we'll just assume for E3 purposes that we'll put it on the agenda. Schedule a workshop, I mean. Okay.
Agree. Thank you. Now we move on to item D3. Fiscal year 2017 Edwards Barn Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Recommendation is that the City Council accept the 2017-2018 JAG Grant Award and ratify the expenditure plan for the JAG allocation and authorize the City Manager or his designee to process all documents required for the program.
No questions? I move.
I do have a question. So I think I was reading is it under our captain? I think that's what I was reading for the grant that was just received.
Yeah,
right?
It's his item, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So is this something that you apply for every year? I mean, can you give me some history background? This is the first time I've seen something like this. I've only seen CDBG block grants being applied, and then, of course, captain receiving them for the benefit of the city.
Yeah, so it's a justice assistance grant, and this is the first time I've seen it because I've been in positions where I don't see them, but I do know the county gets these and applies for them regularly every year. So when it comes to the city, as a city police department, we have the opportunity to, I actually only had 3 days to put this together. It came in very quickly, so I got some assistance from Sam Lucia, the last captain, and we put it together, and it's about $50,000. Some of it will go to Celebrate, a software program that we need, and the majority of it will go to overtime.
Yeah, just to provide a little bit of the history. John wasn't here the last time this came up, but so these aren't competitive grants. These are more of an allocation type of grant that the federal government provides. It's really just a matter of filling out an application and telling them what you're going to do with the money, and so long as it meets the program requirements
you received a certain amount of money that was already predetermined. So in this case, that predetermined amount is listed in your agenda. I won't read it to you, but it's largely going to be used for overtime and then the software that Captain Schuler mentioned. So.
No further questions. Thank you.
City Manager,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. I know you spent about 3 hours with Ms. Gomez, going over the agenda, and I'm surprised that none of this is explained to her at that time because she's not aware of it.
This item was not one that we got to during that meeting. We focused on some of the earlier items and did not get to this item during that meeting.
You don't go through the entire agenda
We don't always make it all the way through, no.
with the time that's allotted? You don't have time to go through it? Okay.
Mayor Garcia, I appreciate that. I've been in council for 7 months. I don't see you or any other council member trying to mentor me through everything. If you've been aware, I've posted a lot of the things of what I'm doing for our city, just as you are doing a lot of things. This is not the second time you've made that same comment. I do spend every week a minimum of 5 hours with city staff, not only sitting down with the agenda, reading it word by word. A lot of them can tell you that I'm one of the only council members in their lifetime that they've said that would sit with them and be very meticulous with every single item that is here. And 3 hours has not been enough. And I'm not sure if you get through the agenda yourself. So maybe I should ask you public questions and see if you can respond to them, since you're so much up to par and very much experienced. So I'll look forward to meeting with you and maybe having some feedback without them involved and have inclusion in you. So I look further to meeting with you so you can help me and mentor me. I know you're a great mentor.
Move approval, move council accept the 2017-18 JAG grant.
Second. Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Negretti. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Kennedy absent.
Item D4. Is this to be continued, or are we
Madam
going
Mayor,
to discuss it?
may I request the council's consensus to continue this item to our next meeting?
I'm in agreement.
Yes, we are.
I want to understand why are we not discussing this? Why are you asking to be? Are we missing information? Because the staff, when I was there with them for 3 hours, didn't explain that you would be saying anything like this. So I'm wondering, why was there that request?
Yes, did you have a consensus to continue the item to the next meeting?
Yeah, there is no consensus. Kennedy's not here, and I'm not consenting to that. I'm asking, what was the reason for stalling it? Are we missing information, or what's happening?
I don't know. I don't have that information.
So does anybody know why we're not going through this agenda item?
I think there was a request, and I believe there are 3 people voting in favor of continuing the item.
Okay, so then just no explanation as to why we're not seeing it right now, whether we're missing information or anything like that.
I suspect that explanation will occur at the next meeting when the item's presented.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, so then now we have public comments. Madam Clerk, please read the statement.
This is the time and place for the general public to address the City Council on any item listed or not listed on the agenda. Per Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the Council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The Council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes per individual or less as deemed necessary by the mayor, depending upon the number of individuals desiring to speak. All communications are to be addressed directly to the council, not the members of the audience. This is a professional business meeting, and courtesy and decorum are expected. Please refrain from any debate between audience and speaker, making loud noises, or engaging in any activity which might be disruptive to the decorum of the meeting. Any person or group who interferes with the conduct of a city council meeting by willfully interrupting and or disrupting the meeting is subject to removal. A peace officer may be requested to assist with the removal should any person or group fail to comply with an order of removal by the council. Any person or group who resists removal by a peace officer is subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9, Penal Code Section 403.
Thank you. I do have several cards. The first one is Alexis Gonzalez, and after Alexis is James Mayo.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia and City Council. My name is Alexis Gonzalez, and I am the youth ministry leader from Victory Outreach Church of Victorville, and also the daughter of Pastor Alex Gonzalez of Victory Outreach Victorville. I am here today to declare that Victory Outreach Victorville stands together, shoulder to shoulder with the mayor and with the city council as we try to find a solution to the violence that has plagued our city this past year. Our church has responded to the call for prayer that Mayor Garcia called this past week. As we speak, over 150 members from Victory Outreach Victorville are gathered with other churches from our community to pray for the peace in our city. Our battle cry is stop the violence, increase the peace. I wanted to let the City Council know about a Stop the Violence March and Candlelight Vigil that our church is spearheading, scheduled for this Saturday evening at 6 p.m. We will be meeting on the southwest corner of Hesperia Road and Nisqually Road in Victorville. We will march against violence and meet for a prayer vigil to honor those who have recently lost their lives from the wave of violence that has hit our city. As a follow-up to Stop the Violence March, Victory Outreach Church of Victorville is spearheading a community event entitled Operation Love, and LOVE is an acronym of the word Love Over Violence Effort. We are planning it for Saturday, September 9th at Hook Park. We have a 3-on-3 basketball tournament planned for the young people of our city, as well as a concert with young talent from the high desert that will bring a positive message to the youth of Victorville. We would like to know if the city would help our cause by providing the necessary permits, insurance, and proper equipment that is needed to bring a concert to our community to promote peace and love in our streets. In conclusion, I want to reiterate that Victory Outreach Church of Victorville is committed to working with the mayor, the city council, and the sheriff's department, and whoever else is willing, so that we can see a stop to the violence and an increase of peace. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you, too.
Thank you.
After James Mayo, I have Mishika Ross.
My name is James Mayo. I'm a member of the High Desert Community Coalition here in Victorville. I've been a resident of Victorville for 4 years. I'm here tonight to ask that you take a closer look at some of the safety issues in our city. If you look at some of the grocery stores and liquor stores and smoke shops in Victorville, you'll see pretty much the same problems. People hanging out in front, panhandling, rolling marijuana right in front of the smoke shops. These aren't the kind of conditions that inspire new businesses we'd like to see move in. When businesses create unpleasant conditions for those around them, this drives potential customers and new businesses out of the area. As a member of the High Desert Community Coalition, I've taken the opportunity to talk to Victorville business owners that operate around liquor stores and smoke shops. We've had business owners tell us that drug deals are taking place outside liquor stores in their shopping centers. We've had restaurant owners in these areas tell us that people under the influence are coming in and demanding free food. Not all stores are like this, but the ones that are need to be addressed. I'm a father of 4. My oldest son is 15, and my wife and I have worked very hard to teach him that trying alcohol or drugs just one time could be devastating. I don't like the idea that he could make one stupid decision and be able to purchase alcohol because the store isn't being responsible and is selling to kids. It is my understanding that Victorville's existing conditional use permit was adopted in 2013 so that the city could more easily require new liquor stores opening up to maintain safe and clean environments and practices that don't endanger the rest of the community. However, these operating standards don't apply to stores that already existed prior to the adoption of the conditional use permit. So we would like to see the city address the problems that some of these stores are causing. We don't want to see any further deterioration in our city. There's plenty of research showing that the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control doesn't have the resources to address all of these problems. So we are asking for an ordinance that would give our city and our law enforcement the tools to address these concerns. I would also like to suggest a workshop with law enforcement and prevention experts for further discussion on how we can fix these problems. Other cities in Southern California have had success in this area, and it's time for some success in our city too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sheikha Ross, and after Ms. Sheikha, Jennifer Neri.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Maishika Ross. I am a resident here. I've been living here for 11 years, and I am a part of the High Desert Community Coalition. Since being here for the last 11 years, I've had children to graduate from Victor Valley High School. And although that they have graduated from Victor Valley High School, my concern is for the students that still attend that school. I encourage you to take a moment when possible to look at a 1 mile radius within Victor Valley High School, and you will see all of the liquor stores and things of that nature that are saturated. And the reason for me bringing this up is because not only do these students visit those stores before and after school, they also depend on those stores for their daily family necessity needs. And that is really a concern. And one of the things that High Desert Community Coalition have done, we have conducted an operation to see how easy it is for kids to purchase alcohol. And it was very appalling that 10 stores out of 24 did not ask for identification. So that is also a concern, and it's a problem. Being that I operate a local nonprofit and I assist single mothers and grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, a lot of those head of households are not at home. They're either at work or at school, and I'm quite sure that that's also a concern of theirs. So I'm bringing it to you because I know that you may have children, grandchildren, godchildren, and I know that it wouldn't sit well with you if that child that you know is able to walk in and purchase an alcohol item without an ID. Their whole life could be changed. This is a problem in our community. The alcoholism in our youth is rising. It's another thing that we really need to be mindful about and look at what are we doing to Victorville. Just like Mr. Negretti, he mentioned about 7th Street. Victor High School is on 7th and Mojave. When you have an opportunity, please drive by there and see how many liquor stores and smoke shops are saturated in that community. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the message that we're sending to our youth? And they are the future, and what are we going to do about it? So those are some concerns that I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, Mary, and Mike Grabhorn after her. Mike Grabhorn.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jennifer Neri, and I'm a resident of Victorville and a member of Root, Revive Our Old Town. For almost 2 years now, residents and the community members have come together to address the issue of safety in Old Town Victorville. Residents have expressed concern over the nuisance and illegal behavior, such as vandalism and the public use of drugs and alcohol. In looking into these concerns, we've learned that there is an over-concentration of liquor stores in our neighborhood. This over-concentration leads to many problems, some of which I witnessed when I helped the evaluations of several liquor stores in Old Town area. We saw that all these liquor stores had an advertisements that cluttered the windows, preventing anyone from seeing in or out. One had many patrons hanging around the store and in the parking lot. We even witnessed a homeless woman being dragged by a sheriff deputy, which for some reason resulted in 4 different sheriff deputies responding to this single incident. Would this be considered a waste of resources? As a result, the Root Coalition has partnered with the HDCC, the High Desert Community Coalition, to identify local efforts that could help the city of Victorville work with liquor store owners to minimize the problems that are occurring around their locations. After researching a number of solutions that have worked in other California cities, we would like to request that the city hold a workshop to discuss solutions, identify desired community standards and practices for alcohol sales, and gain input from residents, local businesses, alcohol retailers, stakeholders, and city staff. I feel that the rise in crime cannot be blamed on any one single factor, but numerous contributing factors. And one way that we can try to gain back control of our community is by placing these businesses that sell alcohol to certain standards. Because just like marijuana, alcohol is a gateway drug for many youth and young adults. This is the time to act is now before things become more unmanageable. Thank you.
Thank you. After Mike, it'll be Maggie Martin.
Good evening. The one thing that I wanted to talk about was the ABC, and it seems like a lot of us are under the impression that ABC is going to come and inspect our liquor stores and be sure they're checking for ID and that they don't have their windows covered and everything. So we looked up some statistics. In San Bernardino and Riverside County, there are six ABC agents. The Sacramento Bee has reported that there is 1 agent for every 621 outlets. This means that ABC is not going to come to Victorville. The chances of them inspecting the liquor stores, it's just not going to happen. They're going to focus on really severe problems, and hopefully we don't have any of those here. But they're going to be in other cities focusing on that. And so we need to explore approaches and ways that we can regulate the liquor stores. This includes, as was mentioned, the loitering, graffiti, gang activity, drug sales, and we've seen all of these, and if you go to the liquor stores, I know you've seen them all too. And we need to get a curb on this because it overflows into the surrounding districts and surrounding areas. We have fast food restaurants that have people come in and coerce them to give them food. They refuse to leave. They urinate on the floor. There's different problems like this, and we just have to take the responsibility. And as a member of HDCC, we're willing to work with the city to be able to figure out ordinances and ways that we can prevent these kind of acts, because we need to do something, and we can't expect somebody else to come in and fix our problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie Martin, and after Maggie, El Cotillo.
Good evening, Your Honor and Counsel. Your Honor, I may ask or beg if I need an additional minute or two. I'm going to try and power through this. First of all, I come again to this meeting tonight appalled and shocked by the continued behavior of Councilmember Gomez. I'm going to look right at her and read my comment. Well, I can't look right at her, but I'm going to read right to her. Once again, I find myself appalled by your behavior, although I don't know why, as it's pretty commonplace. Take your petty, sniping, backbiting tongue behind closed doors, as there is a time and place for everything. This is not the appropriate forum for that type of behavior. Your behavior reflects very poorly only on you and is an embarrassment to the city. Sometimes silence speaks more than words, as Councilman Negretti so clearly demonstrated here for you tonight. Going back a month ago, when Councilmember Gomez decided to reveal our city clerk, Carol Lee Bates' retirement, I noticed a little bit of a look of shock and surprise on everybody's face up there, as well as people in the audience, as that is not her place to do that, since her supervisor is our city manager, Doug Robertson. And I felt like that stole possibly Doug's thunder, and I would feel that way. I don't know how Doug feels. I would feel that way. But even if he felt that way, he's too much of a gentleman to say anything about that. But that was very inappropriate. Her retirement's not till several months away, and I don't even know what the purpose of that early revelation was. So, once again, I'm offended, as I continuously am when I come, more for the most part. The other thing I want to bring up, it goes back to the, what are we calling that? The tax use for the fire and police. How are we labeling that measure? How is that labeled? Public safety tax? Thank you. Yeah, I want to share something with you, and I hope the captain won't give me the evil eye afterwards. I was told yesterday or the day before, I ran into somebody I'm acquainted with up at the park in my neighborhood, and I was made aware by him that there was a serious assault on a woman by a black male adult. She was a Hispanic female in the Cabana area. They were having a barbecue, I am reading. They started to argue loudly, and then the man became irate and started throwing things all over the Cabana Park area. The man then started to physically attack the woman by hitting her, knocked her on the ground, and, quote, stomped on her head. A bystander, this is a person that told me, called dispatch. Lines were busy. I had that happen to me a couple days ago. It happens, but not that often. Then he called 911 and urgently asked for the PD to get to the park.
Your time is up, hon.
Okay. Basically, it's about we need that measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Al? Alcatel?
Hello. I'm here to talk about what's been going on between North Korea and the United States. And thank God we got Donald Trump for president right now, because he's given us a little more time to prepare. But we're not getting any information from the city or from the federal government on how to take care of ourselves if there's a nuclear attack. And if even we got several submarines out there, one submarine could destroy the whole country of North Korea. But they say there's still a possibility that they could get 1, 2, or 3 off before they destroyed them. So what do we do? If it depends. If it's a real windy day, they say stay in your house for 24 hours and don't leave it. That means when the wind blows up here, it blows everything in your house. It blows the sand, the dust, everything. And that's what it's going to do with the nuclear fallout, too. So we don't know what nuclear fallout looks like. After 24 hours, they say you can go out of your house. If there's nuclear fallout, it's going to be all over the ground. It's going to be everywhere, everything you touch. And all you got to do is get it on you. And it's a slow, pitiful death. You don't die quick. And we have no information from the city. I wish you would call the military. I've called them several times, but I'm a single person. I try to get all the information I could. Nobody will give you anything. If one of you guys called from the city council, I would think they would give us booklets or something, how to take care of ourselves. That's your job to do that, is to protect us. And nuclear is a hell of a lot more dangerous thing than you people are looking at it right now, because we got a few days reprise. Monday, South Korea and the United States start practicing war games again. And Un said he don't want us to do that. That's a provocation. So this might all start over again. So what we need, people are going to have to come around with Geiger counters and say, okay, your place is safe to walk on now. Who's going to do that? What about these people who are living by themselves, an old woman or an old man? Nobody to help them. You people should be looking into that with the people that are working for the city now and have them check on that stuff. There's a lot of people. I live by myself, but I'm an old man too, but I'm in pretty good shape for being an old man. So tomorrow, me and my nephew are coming over, and we're going to recaulk every window in my house. And them little slits in the aluminum where you have to have them, cover them too, so nothing will get in. I'm going to call the gas company and tell them I'm going to cover the vent on the roof, shut the gas off. I'm going to ask him what to do. You got to know what to do. You got to keep, if they want you to stay in your house for 24 hours,
Your
they
time
think
is up,
that it's going to come in 24 hours. This is important. If you think that thing is more important than the nuclear stuff,
Your
you shouldn't
time is
be
up.
up there.
Thank you. Those were all the cards that I had. So we move on to E3, discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming City Council agenda. I don't know if there's any additional ones. Did I skip the city manager?
I don't know, it's on mine.
Yeah, I did. City manager,
I'm
sorry.
You don't want to hear from me.
No, I'm anxious to go.
Okay,
I'm anxious
actually, I
to
don't
go.
know if I can
gotta
follow
go.
that last speaker up, actually, to be honest. So we have some good things coming up here in the city. Run in the Park is at Sunset Ridge this Saturday morning. Check in at 7:30. The run starts at 8 a.m. It's $5 for adults. You get a nifty number to wear. And let's see here. Kids 13 and under are free. Bring your kids, bring your dog, and or just bring yourself and come out and have a good time running in the park. There's a 3K and a 5K. Run or walk. Fall Festival, the premier event in the entire high desert, maybe in Southern California. Maybe I'm overselling a little bit with that one, but is coming up October 6th and 7th. We're expecting, again, to have well over 30,000 people. That's our estimate just because we can't count any more than that. But there'll probably be more than that because for the first time in probably a decade, we're actually adding a second day back in, Friday night. The venue will open up at 7 o'clock, show starting at 8 o'clock with Fat Cat Swinger, the local band who's done really well for themselves and makes the High Desert proud every time they come out. So come out with your sweetie and do some swing dancing and enjoy yourself Friday night, then come back Saturday morning for the traditional fall festival that we've all grown to know and love. 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We've got music, entertainment. Friends of the Library will be there with Barnes & Noble Book Fair. More food vendors than you've ever seen in the high desert before. Civic Center will be shut down all the way from Seneca to as far as it takes, and we'll all be there having a good time. Hope to see everybody there too. That's it.
Thank you. Now, do we have any items for our upcoming City Council agenda?
On June the 15th, the City Council received a packet of information regarding policies and procedures for the conduct of the council and the meetings. Workshop on June 20 from 3 to 5 p.m. And almost 2 months have gone by and nothing. I would request that this be agendized for the next meeting, and either the council agree to do nothing or to do something, because this is an item that's that's just hanging, and staff doesn't know what to do, and neither does anybody else. City Council indicated that they were going to move forward with adoption of this. Rather than debate it, just put it on the agenda and determine what we're going to do with it so that we can not have it as a pending item. So, hold the council of the city clerk. If the majority agree, I'd like to have this on the council so we can either dispose of it or adopt it or do something.
Agree.
Would you clarify what this means? What are you referring to? Hanging? I don't understand.
Policy and procedures.
Oh, the censorship that was put on March 21st by Mr. Negretti, right, to proceed?
I don't know.
Well, we had a hearing, and we were supposed to do a workshop. There was no quorum, so I request that we have it back to have a hearing so that we'd all have unlimited time to speak about this item, since that's the reason why I didn't give my line-by-line understanding of what was happening, with the understanding that it would be done at a workshop. But when there was no quorum, I think that was a strategic move on behalf of what was done. So I would ask for that right to for it to go back on to make it a hearing. Yeah, and I also have the right, according to Mr. Dobranowski's explanation, to have this as a hearing, because that wasn't a hearing.
I believe that the request from Mayor Pro Tem Cox is just to have the item put on the next agenda, and I believe there's a consensus on that.
Yes.
Put it on the agenda for discussion. We may have a hearing after that, may not, but we need to do something with it.
Well, I know we still need to have a hearing, and that's based on law, so that doesn't need a majority. So that would be something that we still would have without having a consensus or not.
I'm not aware of any legal requirement for actually having a hearing other than it being on a public agenda.
Yeah, well, when we had that discussion, you had something else to say, that I had the right to continue on with that hearing, since it was with that assumption that we would have a workshop, but the workshop never came about.
So there's a consensus to place this on the next agenda, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone else have anything else for the
Yes.
upcoming agenda?
So we have the Fall Festival quickly approaching, and I think it's the duty of council to have a representation there, so when our constituents or anyone that comes has questions, or just the general presence. And I did ask the manager if we can have specifically something where council were to be able to sit and have representation, and he suggested that I bring it to council. I don't know if they're going to agree, or if they have time to sit for 2 days at that fall festival where about 30,000 people come. But I think personally that it's important to have representation, not only to have city staff, but actual elected officials. So that's something that I like to add on the agenda, to be able to have council be able to have presentation there, somewhere to sit. And I'm not obligating anyone here. I just know I would make myself available.
Just to clarify, you said presentation. When we discussed it in agenda briefing yesterday, you mentioned having a booth area.
Right. And so it's not presentation as a PowerPoint, is to show presence.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear, because I didn't want the council to be confused with what your request was.
And so I'm going to formally ask, not for a consensus, I'm going to ask for a formal vote. That way nothing lingers and everything's on the record. And whenever I request something, it's just for clarification, because there seems to be, is it or isn't it? And for my sake, I want clarity. So I'm going to make that motion.
Before you make the motion, please, Doug, would you explain what?
When Councilmember Gomez and I spoke yesterday, she asked if the entire council could have a booth at the Fall Festival. We have, 180-ish booths at the festival. And I indicated to her that certainly if direction from council was to make a booth available for the city council, that we could do that, but that it wasn't something I could simply do without that direction from the council, because a single council person wants a booth doesn't mean that necessarily a majority does or doesn't. So I suggested that she bring it up here under these items for agendizing at a future meeting, or depending on Andre's take on it, you could potentially just provide direction one way or the other at this point. It's not a complicated item.
When is the Fall Festival again?
October 7th. The booth areas actually aren't going to be open during the concert. Just there is going to be some food available. So it would be just Saturday, October 7th, from, if I remember from my notes right, 9:30 to 4, or 9 to 4 p.m. 9 o'clock to 4 p.m.
Offer a comment? We probably should just push this on the agenda and discuss it. I would love to see a TANF booth for staff people to ask the technical questions. That's not the role of the city council. For them to politic, they can feel free to mingle with the crowd. So as long as it's not staffed by council members wanting to answer technical questions, since that's not the role, they would certainly be welcome to be there and watch the staff answer those technical questions. Advise it, the city attorney, you need to advise the council on what happens if 5 council members in the same booth decide to go in a certain way because of a particular question. don't need to go into it now. There's plenty of time to put it on the next agenda. And if your motion is to agendize it, I would second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No?
Motion fails.
Just for information's sake, each of the departments does have a booth. We advertise it so people can come and ask questions about planning, code enforcement, airport, that sort of thing for those for the technical questions. So just wanted to make sure the public was aware.
And
if
they
you're
are
really
the-
curious about city things, you can come there and find that out too.
And they are the professionals that are actually able to answer technical questions.
Yes, but we were elected on November 8th, or at least I was. Other of you were elected on a different date. But I think as a representation of the people, we are the face of the city, not the staff. The staff, in conjunction with us, makes what it is that we have today, and that's why we have 5 elected officials and then staff to help support. So just in the means of understanding the will of the people, it's always nice to mingle with the people where they're at. You know, this is what I think is of opinion, but there's disagreement, and we can disagree all day. The second item that I wanted to bring to the attention also was, I admire Mr. Mayor Neri to come in and say directly, let's have a workshop. And I think that's something that we should have. There's been several attempts, at least on my behalf, maybe other council members as well that I'm not aware of, to try to bring stuff to the forefront and do like a forum or something where we have staff, particularly Captain Schuler, where questions and this kind of knowledge base can be tossed around, educated, bring stakeholders, community members. So I would ask that this workshop that they've requested be agendized, and we can use it as a workshop and have them come in and probably have Schuler or someone that we would have this discussion, I guess. But that's an agenda item that I like to see at the forefront, and so this is my motion to try to bring that to a workshop.
And a motion by Ms. Gomez. Is there a second? There is no second, then the motion dies.
So the third thing that I have was, I know that the High Desert Coalition, along with other organizations and other entities, may be a small group trying to pull a lot of weight, not only in the city of Victorville, not only in the High Desert, but maybe surrounding cities. So I was hoping that City Council would somehow create like a task force where we can appoint 1 or 2 people from the community. They spearheaded. Each of us would have 1 or 2 people we appoint, and we can probably meet with them once a month, maybe have an agenda every 3 quarters, see what's happening. But I think when the people speak, we at least let to give them something, you know, that we're there for them. And I think that would be something that we could do. We have planning commissioner already. We have advisory committee. And so I think adding something like this, like a workforce or some kind of task force coalition, would also be beneficial for the city. We have a lot at hand, and I think they're already doing a great job. There's probably other members that aren't aware of what they're doing. So if we can appoint someone, I'm just saying this would be another agenda item that I'd like to have discussion and have input also by my council members, my colleagues, in other words. And so I make that motion now.
Motion by Ms. Gomez. Is there a second? There is no second, then the motion dies.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to respond. I've been in contact with the coalition past few months, I don't know how many times. And I have sent, I don't know how many items to staff. Sheriff's Department is the enforcement agency, the code enforcement agency. So I got a complaint that was graffiti. We have a graffiti crew at the city that goes around and removes graffiti. That's not a mark against the liquor store or the restaurant or anything else. It's something we take care of. And as these items have come up, I've asked staff, have we addressed it before? And they're addressing it continually all the time. In fact, there's a request that came to me last week that has a series of questions, which I referred to staff. We have about younger than, underage buying or attempting to buy. I'm not sure what it is. I checked with the police chief, and they seem to handle that. We're not getting involved in that. We do have a conditional use permit on virtually everything, and it's also, there's a request to make a lot of the rules about covering the windows. We have an ordinance on that. So if we have the specific complaints, we can have code enforcement to go to that liquor store or whatever. We heard tonight that people are going into fast food restaurants and demanding food. That's a homeless issue, and I don't think there's any study that's shown that that's because somebody was buying liquor. So staff has been very busy looking at this. It seems like, my impression, I hope it's wrong, that if we'll just adopt a ordinance, it's called a prior approved or whatever it's called,
deemed approved ordinance.
deemed approved, then they're satisfied. Even if it says nothing, somehow they're satisfied. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it's about. But we're very serious about addressing each and every issue they raise. And we have ordinance after ordinance, and we have code enforcement looking into it. Do we want to meet? Sure. But if I wanted to have a committee and meet with every call I got, we would have 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. It's just as bad that people are dumping. We have a crew that picks up dump sites. We have automobiles that are speeding. We have a police department that we're putting our faith in, and they're doing everything they can, including the code enforcement officer. So if there's a complaint, put it into writing and send it to us and see if it's covered. And this council addresses this all the time. I'm sorry, but I just can't believe that we go to all of this just to get a deemed approved and then you're okay. There's something wrong with this whole story. And I intend to raise that further up the ladder. There's just something wrong with this. We cover it over and over and over. We cover it. Still going to look into it. And we're going to answer the questions that I got in the memorandum because they deserve to be answered. Odd.
Madam Mayor, if I might just provide a little bit of education, because a lot of folks in the audience may not have heard of a deemed approved ordinance. Essentially, and I'm going to oversimplify it, but a deemed approved ordinance is similar to a mandatory sentencing requirement on a judge. If there are code enforcement issues with liquor stores, we have the ability to ultimately remove their business license and shut them down. It does take time. They are provided with their rights, under the law. What a deemed approved ordinance would do is essentially the council would say that if liquor store A does these things, then their license will be revoked automatically, and it sort of shortcuts the typical hearing process that they are entitled to. So I just didn't want people wondering what that term was, but that's essentially what that term means.
Well, I assure you, we look into it. We talked about a gathering of unsavory people. I generally find that at the grocery store. We're not going to close them. Grocery store after grocery store that you can't see through the glass because they got the daily specials up. We're not going to write them a citation. Get to the facts, and let's have the police department look into this. And if we need to contact ABC, we will do so. And by the way, ABC does work Victorville. More to this. There's something going on. I'd really like to know what it's about. There's just some magic. Okay, let's pass an ordinance that doesn't say anything, and then everybody's happy because it says deemed approved. Come on. Let's address the issue. And the issue is not graffiti on the windows. Somebody goes to a business tonight and puts graffiti on it. We don't close that business because it had nothing to do with the business. We have a crew that goes the next morning, and we spend a lot of taxpayers' money. We clean up trash. We're doing the best we can. If there is a real concern that these businesses are selling to teenagers alcohol, there's the man that's going to take care of it. I'm not going to have a citizens committee. Any circumstances, I just doesn't. I'd love to have a debate, a discussion. I'm trying to find out what else do we need to. We got dozens of ordinances that address these issues, and we have people coming up and say you need to address the issues that are addressed, being enforced, having a great deal of. If we left one out, tell us what it is. We'll address it. But that doesn't seem to be the issue. I'm interested in finding out what's really going on.
Okay, thank you. Now we go on to E4, reports from council members.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank the city staff for doing a great job on the traffic signal at Amethyst and Mojave. It's unfortunate sometimes, but this is another great example of we see the needs. There's things that we can do. We can't fix all the problems, and I wish we wouldn't have all the shrines there on Mojave, but I think that's going to help a lot. Secondly, I'd like to thank Dr. Pepper Snapple Group and Kaboom for the $15,000 play grant for Schmidt Park. This is an example of local companies giving back to the community. And from what I recall, Dr. Pepper Snapple had also been very generous before with providing drinks and different things for our events. So I would just like to recognize them as an example of hopefully what we're getting to up here is our businesses and partners and stakeholders giving back to the community. Sometimes we're all worried about our survival. I get it, but at the end of the day, if you're doing well and you give back to your community, it's really going to show. And I came from this community back in the 80s. I mean, to where we are now is the airport's a great example of progress that we've made, even when we got the gut punch when they closed the Air Force Base. So kudos to the city staff and all the folks out there and the companies that are giving back. It makes our job so much easier when we have the fire department go and get a grant and get us a new fire engine. So that's the type of leadership that I really appreciate. Makes me proud to be part of this city. If I look over recently to a lot of the comments that were made here, I really appreciate everybody that stayed and that spoke, because this is the time where we get to hear from you. And believe it or not, we don't live in some $1 million mansions in Victorville. We're right there. I've got problems with neighbors. Some people are very disrespectful. But there's standards. I have my standards, and I'm not going to lower them. And so what we're really trying to do, I think, as a community, as we grow, is try to treat everybody as you would like to be treated. But that's not happening because there's a lot of people out there struggling, a lot of issues. But we hear what you're saying, and I have some ideas, but we can talk about that some other time. But you did come to the right place because we hear you. And keep doing it. If you don't have my email address, please let me know. We are here for you to hear these issues. And so I'm always very, very proud when the city and us are able to respond to a need, because if we don't know about it, how can we help? So you're doing the right thing. On the violence that's increasing, I really struggle with this because the city was really beautiful back in the 80s. It was much different. But just so everyone knows, we doubled in population from 2000 to 2015. So you're going to notice what you're seeing is we have way too many demands on our public safety, and we don't have the resources to keep up with it. I don't know that we are going to be able to keep up with it. So what we've got to do is be as effective as possible and communicate and build those relationships with law enforcement, because information about what's going on in the community is vital. We can't be everywhere at once. No one can do that. But if somebody knows what's going on, you've got to feel comfortable that you can reach out to us and the folks that are up here and keep those relationships going. Support each other. Go to each other's events. I'm going to start doing that a lot more. So there's a lot of things that I can do, and I hope people in our community will keep doing, being involved, keep being involved. But, when the state has policies when they empty out the jails, that affects us. And I normally don't comment on the state. I mean, I could care less, but they're doing stuff that affects us. And now we have to go out and get public safety money, taxes, to go ahead and address these issues. So it's the same thing with the marijuana issue. They're putting the burden and the cost on the cities. And that impacts us in a way that it's just ridiculous. So anyway, keep doing what you're doing. Really proud of sort of the progress we're making. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim? Well, I would like to invite everyone. I called for an evening of prayer that is taking place right now, and I need to be over there, but I'm committed here also. But God knows where my heart is, and my heart is with the people. Nothing about me. I don't want recognition. You don't see me out there promoting myself. I'm strictly doing a job and not for money. Strictly doing a job because I care about my city. I consider myself Victorville, and I love people. I work with people every day, and I call this evening of prayer because of the crime and violence. I have called a meeting and met with the marshal, our sheriff, McMahon, our captain, everyone, our supervisor. It takes time. You don't make things happen immediately. Just because you talk to a person, that doesn't mean that they're out the door to take care of the issue. You talk to God, He acts immediately. And I'm sorry, I have to say this because that's in my heart. And everyone is invited. The meeting is taking place over here at, what's the name of the church?
The Turning Point.
Yeah, and right here on the corner of Bear Valley and Cottonwood, and it'll still be on until 8:30. So I invite you, and please come. I'll be there.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my announcement is, remember, we're going to have elections. A lot of people forget about the gubernatorial elections, and I think that's very important for you to remember. Our elected officials, they work for the people. So when you go out and vote, remember, on June, that's the primary, and then on November, you'll have the election. We are also proposing, or we've already brought this to the attention, but we're going to have a special election for that special tax in November 2017, right? So that's something that you guys should be aware of. And I also would like to let you know that even City Council, we have 2 seats that we have 2 incumbents, Mr. Negretti and Mr. Kennedy, whose chairs are also coming up for election. I read the newspaper today. We already have 1 person vowing for that seat. Those elections will quickly come out in July. If you know anyone that's running for office or whether you're going to vote for the same incumbents, be aware that that election is coming very soon. A lot of us forget. A lot of us don't go out and vote because there is not that televised, that media coming out and telling you that this is what's happening. But these are elections, 3 of them that I'm aware of currently that are coming about. So your governor, your city council here in Victorville, and your special election. So just be aware of those and be mindful. And that was all my message for today. Thank you.
I call to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, and you're invited to come to the prayer meeting.